Good afternoon, I'm Karen Holmes Ward. Home ownership has long been considered one of the key components of building wealth. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu recently unveiled a new $100 million housing accelerator fund to help rental development projects that have had trouble getting financed. Wu wants the city to invest in some of the stalled multifamily residential projects that are in limbo because of high interest rates and supply costs. An equity stake allows the city to reinvest the proceeds of a sale. But some on the city council have concerns about the mayor's plans. City Councilor Brian Worrell joins us now. Brian, good to see you. So what elements of the mayor's plan do you see as problematic?
Good morning, Karen.
Good morning.
So I introduced this hearing order in June that would use $150 million of the city's $512 million in free cash to do similar to what the mayor is introducing to jumpstart housing development in the city of Boston. The city has nearly 30,000 approved but unbuilt units. And we know that these projects have stalled out, whether because of high interest rates or construction costs. So shovels aren't getting into the ground. And when I introduced this hearing order in June, and it seems like the mayor agrees with me because of the acceleration fund, that a development fund will help signal to developers that Boston is a great place to build and to encourage and incentivize those constructions to get going.
So Brian, specifically, what issue do you have with the mayor's plan versus yours?
Yes. So what we saw when we looked at the 30,000 units is that only 3,000 of them are for home ownership. So that means that 90% of our construction pipeline is slated for apartments. So we're not seeing a lot of housing production when it comes to home ownership. And that's what we want to prioritize or incentivize or make sure that that's part of the mayor's plan.
Okay,
and we know that the fastest way.
So the mayor's office wants to start with the Bunker Hill housing redevelopment, which puts about 2,700 more apartments on the rental market, with just over 1,000 of them considered deeply affordable. And so you would like to see more units that can be owned. Is that right?
Yes, we want the development fund to also be able to finance and invest into housing developments for home ownership.
So how do you balance the very present need for more affordable housing now versus the long-term need for wealth building through home ownership?
Say that question again. Sorry,
So,
Karen.
you need affordable housing now. People need housing now, and it's easier to get into a rental unit than it is perhaps to buy a home. So how do you balance the short-term need for more affordable housing with the need for wealth building through home ownership?
Yeah, and I think with the fund, we're able to do both. I think you're absolutely right. I think that we need to make sure that there's production on both sides. And right now, what we're seeing happen here in the city of Boston when it comes to approved buildings or production, that is heavily tilted to the apartment side of things. As I was stating earlier, that nearly 90% of the construction that's in the pipeline is slated for apartments only. And that means only 10% of the construction that's coming online is for home ownership opportunities. So when we're seeing that being stalled out, we're stalling out the ability to stabilize families, to make sure that we're displacing families because we know that home ownership is the stabilization tool that keeps families rooted here in the city of Boston.
Now, speaking of the city of Boston, just to present the mayor's argument, the mayor's office says they're going to get more for the city's money by investing in the rental market than by selling homes. And it essentially makes living in the city more affordable for more people. Is that not the case?
I would love to see their numbers to see how they are justifying that. But what we know is when you buy a home, right, you're locked into a mortgage payment that is consistent throughout the 30-year term. Matter of fact, that mortgage payment, because you're paying down on the principal, it might even decrease throughout the life of that mortgage. So I would love to see those numbers, but we know that when you're buying a home, that the mortgage payment is very consistent and it's not increasing throughout year over year.
Well, Brian Worrell, thank you for tackling this issue on behalf of the city of Boston and those that live here. It's a tough issue. Thanks for joining us. Now to a national issue that's facing some local homeowners. If you're getting a mortgage or refinancing your home loan, a good appraisal is key. 5 Investigates' Mike Bodette found some appraisals coming in low, allegedly because of the color of a person's skin.
I think that appraiser was surprised to see me as the owner.
Philomena Asante couldn't believe it when she saw the appraisal on her home by the ocean in Nahant, a home she had purchased a year and a half earlier. She's a pediatrician who was trying to refinance to get a better interest rate.
Then I get the appraisal report, and the house I purchased for $373. And the appraisal report was a $350 assessment, so less than what it was worth when I bought it.
She says the lender was surprised too.
There was nothing about the property that would say that the value had gone down.
But the lender told her there was nothing they could do about it. Asante couldn't get the loan.
I lost a refinancing deal that could have saved me thousands per year.
When you got that appraisal,
Yeah.
and you saw the number,
Yeah.
what did you think?
This isn't right. This is discrimination.
If you were a white woman, do you think that appraisal would have come in higher?
I absolutely do.
Asante filed a complaint with the Board of Registration of Real Estate Appraisers, writing, his decision not to appraise higher, even at the original $373K given market conditions, is based on racism because I am a black woman owner in Nahant. Records we obtained from the state board show it's referred 4 appraisal discrimination complaints for prosecution in the last 5 years, including Asante's. Complaints that resulted in disciplinary action ranging from a revoked license to fines. The board found Asante's appraiser failed to perform an adequate market analysis. It fined him $500 and ordered him to complete a 15-hour course.
Slap on the wrist.
I can't say for sure that there was or was not discrimination involved.
Steve Sousa is executive vice president of the MBREA, the state's professional organization for appraisers. He says appraisal discrimination has become a national concern, and he supports new rules that will require additional training for appraisers and make it easier for people to challenge an appraisal.
I've met many of the appraisers in Massachusetts. They're good people. Are there some bad apples? Certainly.
Sousa worries appraisers are being unfairly targeted.
You keep being told that you're biased and racist and you're always discriminating. And to have an entire profession painted with the same brush is just not appropriate.
I get that all the time, where people love to distance themselves and turn this into an over their issue.
Jillian White is CEO of Appraisal Insights, which is focused on educating people about appraisal bias.
These cases are absolutely underreported.
An appraiser herself, she had to whitewash her family's home, removing all indications that they're black in order to facilitate the sale.
Yeah, whitewashing is not a solution.
Why do you think this type of discrimination is continuing to happen?
For me, it's not so much a continuation as much as it never stopped. Race was a way that appraisers were taught in their texts to assign value. So bias is built into the appraisal process.
Asante says she's glad she reported the appraiser to the state and encourages others who encounter questionable appraisals to do the same.
It might not change the outcome for you, but it could in the future change the outcome for somebody else.
In a statement, the commissioner of the Division of Occupational Licensure tells Mike Bodette, quote, the board has been actively discussing anti-discrimination initiatives recommended by federal appraiser regulatory bodies and is now drafting updates to Massachusetts regulations that incorporate federal anti-bias training requirements and standards of practice, unquote. Now, Asante only learned about the discipline against her appraiser when we told her about it. The board admitted it never informed her of the decision, but tells us it's now prioritizing communication with people who file complaints.